let's chat about some books. Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel, or welcome to my channel if you're new here. Hi, my name is Liz, and in today's video we are going to be chatting about the books I read in January. So my January wrap up. I read, let me see, what are my stats? I need my reading journal. I don't know how to do anything without my reading journal, if I'm being completely honest with you. I read a total of 13 books this month. I did 10 physical books and then I had 3 audiobooks. I only read 2 books out of my winter TBR out of 12, but I was able to also get a lot of books that have been sitting on my TBR for a while, read and done. Also, I've been trying to be better about if I buy a new book, I have to read it immediately. And that is another thing that I have been actually sticking to this past month. So very, very excited about that. There's a few books that were on my winter TBR that are books I don't think I'm gonna get to, period. And I'm kind of just like releasing myself from that. I'm still trying to whip through as many of those as I can, but there's definitely a couple, like there's one that's like a holiday romance. So I'm clearly not gonna be reading any more Christmassy rom-com books going into February. And then also there's one that's like the start of a trilogy and like the 3rd book's not out yet, so I don't Milo Murphy have the zoomies, apologies. So I'm not really feeling motivated to start a new series right now when I'm trying to complete series that I'm in the middle of. But that is another thing that I did really well this month, is I actually continued and I finished a few series that I'm in the middle of, and feels really good. Enough with the stats. Let's chat about the books that I read in January. Starting the month off strong. Not really, actually. I read To Bleed a Crystal Bloom by Sarah Parker. This is actually an older book that she wrote, and it just recently got like traditionally published, I believe, and they redid the covers and everything. It's got really pretty sprayed edges. This is the author of When the Moon Hatched, so I was really, really excited to read another one of her books while I'm anxiously waiting for Ballad of Falling Dragons later this year. Hey, no, we're not gonna get on the bookshelf. And so I decided to pick up this book at the very, very end of 2025. I wanted to start the new year off reading another one of her books. When the Moon Hatched is definitely better. This story is a loosely inspired retelling of, not Sleeping Beauty, Rapunzel. Sorry. I have never read a Rapunzel retelling, so I was very, very intrigued by this book for that reason specifically. But this does deal with like an age gap romance, which I'm not overly fond of age gap romances, unfortunately. That was hard for me to get used to. Our main character, she is found by this, I don't even know if he's fae. See, that's where I'm like confused. There's a lot of different like species in this book, so I'm not really sure what they all are. I'm assuming he's fae. I'm just gonna say he's fae. Our male protagonist, he comes across this village that has just been like totally destroyed. There's a huge massacre that has happened. Our female main character, she is like the last survivor, and she's like 2 years old, and he decides to protect her. He takes her away and he keeps her in this like tall tower and everything. It's like, you guys know what Rapunzel is. But this whole time that she's been living here and being raised here, she has had a huge crush on him. And that's where it kind of got a little icky for me, just because he hasn't necessarily been around. He's been keeping his distance the whole time she's been raised here. That's where it gets a little dicey for me, at least. And he doesn't act on anything. He very much tries to steer her away from him. He does not encourage it. I've had previous fantasy books where like the guy is hundreds of years old and the girl is like 25, and I didn't bat an eye because he looks like he's 30. But it's the fact that she was raised here and he's been kind of like a father figure to her. I can't get behind that. But this whole book is her just living in isolation. She really does not know much about this kingdom or anything about her past. And so she's very naive and just ignorant to a lot of things. And that's one of the things I had a big critique on in this book. However, I am excited to actually continue the rest of the series because I feel like with the way things left off in book 1, book 2, I think she's going to be really coming out of her shell and actually exploring the world and learning about where she came from and figuring things out, because there's lots of questions that go unanswered in this one. I still really love Sarah Parker's writing. It's so bingeable, and I just love the characters that she has created and like this world that we're in. But I will continue the rest of the series as it comes out. I believe it's gonna be a trilogy. The next book I read this month is Fallen City by Adrienne Young. This is her new adult romantasy that she has released. I gotta say, I have some mixed feelings on this one. I definitely still enjoyed it. I really, really love Adrienne Young's writing. It's so detailed and descriptive. I feel like I am there, like I am in this world that she's created, and she has such a way with words to really paint the picture for you so you know exactly what's happening. This one is the first in a duology. It starts out, you have 2 main characters, dual POV, so you get both their chapters. Also, it does like a then and now timeline as well. So you're in this city that is having like a huge rebellion happening. There's this war, it's like a civil war essentially. Both of our characters are on opposite sides of this war, so it starts off, you don't know much about our characters or where this war started, what's really happening, and then you go back to when they first met and how they grew to care about each other. And you learn like the political system surrounding this city. It talks a lot about these like philosophers, and our female main character, she's a priestess. So you learn a lot about both of their different like belief systems and how that works. But this one, it's centered around the politics very heavily. You definitely get that romance, but it is definitely like broken up because of the then and the now chapters as well, because there's obviously a conflict happening where they can't be around each other in the now timeline. I'm very, very curious about where book 2 is going to go. I mean, I already know obviously because of the ending of book 1 where it's heading, and I'm very curious about how that's going to all wrap up. The next book I read this month was House of the Beast by Michelle Wong. This one I was very, very pleasantly surprised with. I really enjoyed this one. In this world, like the different houses, they all worship like a different god. The people in their house, they worship this beast figure, and our main character, she and her mom have been living together. Her mom gets sick, and so she writes to her father, who's kind of abandoned them. So her father comes, he offers to get her mother treatment if the daughter comes back with him and becomes his heir and will receive the beast. Now, when I say the beast, that sounds weird. The way they get their magic is they will cut off their arm as like an offering to the beast, and then he will then inhabit them and possess them, and he's able to give them like strength and ability and things like that. It was so fascinating because the whole time after this happens, she has this like imaginary friend that she's had since childhood, and he all of a sudden reappears and he is the beast, and he becomes like her closest friend. She's got a crush on him and everything, and he just treats her the way she's never been treated. You get to see like their close bond that they've created together as they grow up, and she's training under her father to become this like heir under him. There's this huge competition where they're trying to go into this other realm where the gods live, and they have to hunt down this creature. If they do hunt it down, then they are like the winner and get to be like the head of the household. I don't know if I'm explaining this very well. It deals a lot with like survival, and it does have some like gory moments, but I still was fascinated, and it's so fast paced. I was hooked from beginning to end. Another thing I really loved is the artwork on the inside is beautiful, and throughout the book there's actually like little like sketches that have to do with whatever scene you're reading. Let me try to find one. So like there will be drawings of the characters, so it's very easy to picture what they look like and things like that, and like what's going on. And so I really loved that. I thought that was a really cool added bonus, is having some illustrations thrown in. It's only a standalone, so if you want a standalone romantasy with some found family, this one's for you. The next book I actually listened to as an audiobook, and I don't have a physical copy yet, but I will eventually get a physical copy because this was actually my first 5-star of 2026, which is very exciting, and that is My Husband's Wife by Alice Sweeney. This is her newest release that just came out. I loved this audiobook so much. I have read a few other Alice Sweeney books. I've always said that Rock, Paper, Scissors was my all-time favorite. It was a 5-star read for me a few years ago, and then I read Beautiful Ugly last year, and I didn't love it as much as I wanted to, but this one I would say is like neck and neck with Rock, Paper, Scissors. I loved this book so much. So basically in the story, our couple, they just moved into town, this brand new town up on this cliffside, and it's this fixer-upper house that they've been slowly working on. And our main character, she goes out for a run one morning, and when she comes back, her key doesn't work in the front door, and when she keeps knocking and trying to get in, a woman then opens the door, answers, and asks, who are you? What are you doing here? And the husband comes up and he's like, who are you? Why are you here? This is my wife. Kind of trippy, kind of my worst nightmare. The story just kind of goes from there. It's very fast paced. The whole time I was hooked because it's just like the thought of like, who is lying? Who is in the right? Who is in the wrong? What is actually happening? Meanwhile, you're also getting these other chapters of another woman, and it's like 6 months prior, and she just found out that she has cancer. And so you're following her timeline as well while you're going back to our main character's timeline. The audiobook was fabulous. It also has some like background like elements. It had a full cast from start to finish. I could not figure out what was happening, and I feel like Alice Sweeney just did such a great job with this one. Next up, I read Fake Skating by Lynn Painter. This is her newest book that came out close to the end of last year, or maybe it was like in the fall sometime. I was very excited about this one. This was on my winter TBR because I like to read like an ice skating or hockey romance sometime in the winter. I love Lynn Painter's writing. It's so good. This is YA, so it does follow our two main characters who are in high school. They actually were childhood best friends and something happened where they grew apart, and now it's them. They're in, I think, their junior or senior year of high school, and our female main character, she moved to town and she's now going to the same high school as him, and they have some unfinished business, some things that happened in their past that they have to unpack and talk through with each other. I just really love this one. It is dual POV, and I did listen partly to the audiobook while I was reading this, so I was like immersive reading, and I really loved it. I really enjoyed it. Our characters were just so lovable. I also loved their romance. I haven't been enjoying YA romance in a while, but this one I actually really enjoyed. It kind of brought me back to my feelings that I had when I read Better Than the Movies. They end up having to do like fake dating. Our male main character, he's a hockey player. He's like the star hockey player. Our girl main character, she is trying to get a job, and like there's just different things. They have to strike up a deal together and kind of fake date while also trying to figure out what happened in their past. The next book I read, I ended up reading Rachel Weisz's Group Chat by Lauren Applebaum. This is a romance about a woman who I think she's like about to turn 30 years old. The book literally starts off with she wakes up from a one-night stand and she gets a phone call from her mother saying that the neighbor next door is a billionaire and he's single. Our main character's mother is very overbearing and she just wants to matchmake all of her children. Our main character, she's kind of a train wreck. She does not have her life figured out. She's working a job that she doesn't enjoy, but she does have this group chat with her friends from college, and that is like the majority of this book is this group chat. And I really enjoyed it because of our main character's personality. I thought she was so funny and she was so herself. I feel like she was so unapologetic about who she was as a person and the choices she was making, and you kind of get to see her have this huge arc and her growth throughout the story. Our male main character is obviously this billionaire who lives next door to her parents, and you can see right away she's very resistant. She doesn't want to get to know him because she doesn't want to please her mom, and I just thought it was really funny. I thought there were so many funny moments that I was actually laughing out loud. It was definitely more about friendship and her self-growth rather than a romance. The romance I feel like was such a small portion of this book. I definitely would recommend it if you want a fixer-upper type of book where our main character has to go through some challenges and some obstacles to get to where she actually wants to be in her life. The next book I read this month was Wild Dark Shore by Charlotte McConaughey. I ended up budding reading this with my coworker, and I actually really enjoyed this one. I heard such high praise about this book last year by so many people. A lot of the reviews that I saw, people were describing it as very atmospheric and very just immersive, that you actually get the feeling of this isolation that's happening in this book. And I 100% agree. I think the author did such a great job with her writing to make me feel the way my characters were feeling. So the plot of this one, it's about a family and they live on this isolated island close to the Arctic. They are actually living on this island because it's the last seed bank that exists. And so their job is just to take care of the seeds and take care of this island and do maintenance. They have a very isolated life. Like I said, there's not a lot of people who come to and from this island. It's hard to get there. It's very dangerous. And one day a woman washes up on shore. You do get all of their points of view, which I thought was very fascinating because I was very curious about each of our characters. It's definitely more of like a character study because you're trying to get to know each individual character because they all have things going on, and you can tell that there's this mystery behind it and like why our characters are acting the way that they're acting. And you're also trying to figure out this woman who washed up, like how did you get here? Why are you here? I felt like each character was so well defined. It was definitely a slower paced mystery than I'm used to, but I think the writing just made up for it with how atmospheric it was and how descriptive it was of everything that was happening. The next book I read this month is The Rebel and the Rose by Catherine Doyle. This is book 2 after A Dagger in the Flame. This I think is going to be a trilogy. I thoroughly enjoy this series so much. In this town there's the cloaks and we have the daggers. The cloaks are like thieves and then the daggers are like the assassins. In book 1, our male main character is hunting our female main character, so it's very much enemies to lovers. Like I said, this is book 2, so I'm not going to say much about the plot of this one because I don't want to spoil people for book 1, but I very much enjoyed this one. I highly recommend the series. I'm really excited for book 3. The next book, I actually listened to this one as an audiobook, and that is We Live Here Now by Sarah Pinborough. This is actually horror. You guys know I have mixed feelings on horror, kind of like a love-hate relationship with horror. There's a lot that I don't like, but there's a few that I do like. And this one I actually really enjoyed, surprisingly. Like I said, I listened to it as an audiobook. It does have 2 different narrators for the husband and wife in this story. Our story is following a couple who move into this new house. It's shortly after our female main character wakes up from this coma that she was in. She suffered a really bad fall on this hike with her friends and her husband, and they move into this brand new house that's like out in kind of the middle of nowhere. It's very secluded and it's very private. Her husband ends up leaving for work a lot, so she ends up being home by herself a lot, and she starts to notice some like weird things happening around the house. And so there's just lots of like creepy situations she's put in. It makes her question her sanity, and it seems like her husband doesn't believe her. It felt like like an unreliable narrator from start to finish, which I also have mixed feelings about. I don't usually like unreliable narrators because I like to know what's real and what's not real the entire time. Don't know what that says about my personality, but I actually thoroughly enjoyed this one, and I felt like the way it ended and the way everything ended up, I thought was very interesting and very fitting for the story. Ugh, hold on. Milo's climbing my closet. Down. Where was I? And obviously most horror books don't end with a happy ending, but this one ended with a very satisfying ending, I will say. I ended up giving it 4 stars, which I did not expect, and I highly recommend it. If you like kind of like a creepier, like more paranormal horror book, then this one definitely checks that box. And then the last 4 books that I read this month are actually ones that I read in a 24-hour readathon that I posted last week. So I'm not going to go in like too heavy of detail about each of these books. I'll tell you generically what they're about. But then if you want like more in-depth thoughts and feelings and like my live reactions to these books, you can definitely go watch that video because we went on a roller coaster of emotions with these books, let me tell you. The first book that I read in that video is Wrath of the Dragons by Olivia Rose Darling. This is book 2 after Fear of the Flames, which I thoroughly enjoy this series and this author's writing. It's very, very bingeable. She does such a good job with such witty and funny like banter between her main characters. There's also a huge subplot of found family that I just adored in these books. I'm not going to say too much about what the plot of this one is specifically because it's book 2, like I said, but book 1, our main character, she is an exiled princess who was bonded at birth to 5 different dragons. And in book 1, she makes a deal with this commander of like the enemy kingdom's army to go and save her dragons and then help him in this war against her father, the king. So they have to strike up this deal and work together even though they're not necessarily friends, they're just allies. I really enjoyed it. I ate it up, and same with this one. I ate it up. I actually cried at the ending of this one. Highly, highly recommend it. The next book, this was highly anticipated for me for 2026 new releases, and that is Future Saints by Ashley Winstead. She wrote In My Dreams I Hold the Knife. I've never actually read any of her books. This is the first one that I did by her, and I really, really enjoyed it, and now I want to go back and read her other books. I actually ended up giving this one 5 stars. I did this one as an audiobook because I wanted to work on a puzzle and just listen to my book. I'm so glad I chose to do that because I thought the narrators did such a great job with this story. It is following this band that is suffering this grief and loss because their manager passed away, and so a music executive comes to town and he's trying to help reestablish this band and help them make a comeback after the grief of losing their last manager. It is a love story. It's a little bit more toxic and it's following this band, and so you can kind of infer what that means exactly, but I really, really enjoyed it. I felt like each of our characters had stuff going on, and it deals a lot with grief and some heavier topics as well, but I just really came to love these characters in their story. Also, it felt like it was very similar to Daisy Jones and the Six by Taylor Jenkins Reid, so if you love that one, you would probably enjoy this one as well. The next one I read in that is The Crash by Frida McFadden. I love Frida McFadden's writing. She is very bingeable, very quick and easy chapters to get through. Also, every single chapter ends in like sort of a cliffhanger. This one is following our main character who's 8 months pregnant, I believe, and she is driving to go meet her brother, and while she's driving, she ends up getting in this car crash, and this man comes and drives down the road and helps her out and ends up taking her back to his house where him and his wife live. While she's there, this couple's trying to like take care of her because she injured her leg and can't really walk after this car accident, but there's this big blizzard that's coming through, and so they get snowed in and she's stuck at this house with this couple. That's really all I'm gonna say because I don't want to spoil anything. It's got that tension. It also kind of felt like a scary movie where you're constantly yelling at the TV and telling your main character you're being dumb, you're being stupid, why are you doing this, why are you making this choice? But I still really enjoyed it. It's not my favorite by this author, but it's definitely not my least favorite, so I think it's like kind of in the middle for me. And then the final book that I read this month, and I started but did not finish in that readathon video, is Love Arranged by Lauren Asher. This is actually book 3 in the Lakefront Billionaires trilogy. I love Lauren Asher's writing. I love her books so much. It's so easy to binge through. Like, even though all of her books are like at least 500 pages, if not more, I feel like I fly through them within like 2 days. And this one is following her main character, Lily, who ends up in a fake dating situation with our male main character, Lorenzo, who's running for mayor of this town. They end up striking this deal because she needs him to win the race for mayor over the other guy who's trying to shut down her family business. They also have their own like little past history. Our 2 main characters, they actually matched on a dating app the year prior and really hit it off, and then when they met in person, our male main character said this was a mistake and backed off, and so it's a little bit messy, but this brings them back and gives them like forced proximity. They have to unpack the reason why things didn't work out a year ago, and I just really, really loved it. It is dual POV, so if you enjoy that in your romance books, definitely pick up this series. Needed some fuel. And those are all the books that I read in the month of January. Thank you guys so much for watching today's video. I hope you enjoyed getting to see the 13 books that I read in January. I thoroughly enjoyed all of these books. I feel like it was such a great reading month, especially with 2 5-stars. Yeah, already really enjoying the books that I'm currently reading in February, and I'm so excited. I feel like everything that I'm reading this year is just aligning with me as a reader, and I love it so much, especially since we are in the colder months and it's very dark and gloomy and hard to leave the house with how cold it is. So I'm really glad I have some nice reads to keep me company during this hard time. If you guys enjoyed, please like, comment, subscribe, all that YouTube stuff. Please comment down below what you read this month. I would love to hear your thoughts. If you had any 5 stars, please let me know. And I will see you guys in my next video. Happy reading. Bye.